4 months and 40 pages of notes later, we're finally here. I was researching, I was rewatching this show once upon a time, I was reading academic journals, and I'm so happy to bring you the ultimate deep dive today. I have not seen commentary YouTubers really dissecting the show, although I have seen a lot of recaps. And I have loved this show since I was a kid, and it was high time I reviewed it on this channel. And the fundamental failure of the show and what went wrong. The first season had average viewers of 11.8 million, and by the end, by the 7th season, viewership had dwindled with just 3 million viewers. Today I want to dive into the show's treatment of sensitive issues such as RIPE culture. I'm going to go through each of the characters and a season by season review because we need to explore where the show went wrong or if it was ever good to start with. The cast was attractive and talented, the setting was beautiful, the costumes were gorgeous, the concept was really original. So where did it go wrong? This could have been so much better if it finished in 3 or 4 seasons. So for those of you that just like watching my videos and have no intention of ever watching this show, it's set in Maine, in a fictional town called Storybrooke, and it follows a bunch of fictional fairy tale characters who were cursed by Regina, the evil queen. They had their memories wiped and their names replaced with no recollection of their past selves until Emma arrives in town and becomes the sheriff, and she was brought there by her son Henry, who's convinced that Emma is the savior and the only one who can break the dark curse. There are many mirrors and parallels between the fairy tale world and the real world in Storybrooke, where you can see how it's changed. For example, the troll bridge in the fairy tale world becomes the toll bridge in Storybrooke. The castle is turned into Henry's castle playground. And even consider the name of the town, Storybrooke. It sounds very similar to storybook. First of all, we need to start off with season 1, because that was a really compelling season. It was probably the best in the show, and it got a lot of viewers hooked. It set a very impressive standard, a very high bar that was hard to beat. Regina emerges as one of the best villains I've seen in a long time, conniving and manipulative, particularly her modern version in Storybrooke as the mayor, very domineering and nasty, which sets up a very compelling kind of rivalry between her and Emma, where you can see how much they hate each other. Now, the CGI in season 1 and 2 and 3 really deserves its own section because, God, it was so bad. The CGI, it looks like a video game. I'm not trying to be mean, but it really was terrible, comically so. I'll try and insert some clips if I can, but what is this? But at first I wondered what the point of Regina's curse was, because it really didn't seem to be all that bad. Because she wiped their memories, they couldn't actually remember their past trauma. So for instance, Snow White and Charming, who she wanted to hurt the most, they don't even remember each other, and Charming's in a coma. And the worst that seems to happen is that she, as the mayor, is running everything and kind of bullying Snow White. But Snow White didn't have a bad life by any means. She was a teacher and very good at it, and it brought her a lot of fulfillment. So I was thinking, if Regina's meant to be the evil queen, is this curse really the best that she can do? It's not that scary. But the show does hint that maybe their suffering could be worse than we realize. Like, we don't know the extent of how much she was bullying Snow White. Mr. Gold, everyone's scared of him, particularly the nuns, and we don't actually know what was going on there. But some characters did seem to suffer more than others. For example, the Mad Hatter, he is trapped in this big fancy house, but he has his memories, but no one else will believe him. So he's the only one that knows what's going on, but if he said that, he'd sound crazy, which is a much harsher punishment in my opinion. And Belle has been locked up as a prisoner in a tiny cell for 28 years, which really can't get any worse. Hansel and Gretel don't have a home, and so they're struggling a lot more. And I guess Cinderella was having a hard time as well, because she's pregnant and scared and doesn't know if she'll be alone raising the baby or what's going to happen with that. But it seemed like Snow White was let off relatively easy, which is a bit strange considering she was Regina's main enemy and target. However, for Regina, There's nothing that makes her happier than knowing that she's kept Snow White and Prince Charming apart. And the only way you can do that they could never break it, is them not remembering who they are and how much they love each other. And it's not like they're living the best lives ever. It's the fact that they're stuck in time. The clock never moves, and they're just in this continual loop of a future that has no real hope or nothing really to look forward to. And it's just an endless cycle. And I would argue it's the best curse in the series, because there's quite a few curses done and it was the most effective. But sometimes Regina's plans weren't so well thought out. For example, when Emma arrives in town, she wants to get rid of her, so she tries to poison her with an apple in an apple turnover, and that to me was just comical, because she already tried that in the past with Snow White and it didn't work. And also the fact she baked it for Emma, but Emma didn't eat it in front of her, was so stupid, because then anyone could have eaten it. Henry, Mary, Margaret, which of course, ta-da, is exactly what ends up happening.
My famous turnovers. Old recipe, but delicious.
So not her most inventive plan, but sometimes the show did kind of lean too far into the cringy, Disney, childish territory. And sometimes they're putting in really dark themes and they want the audience to be mature enough to deal with that. But then they add in really childish stuff for kids. So it's a bit confusing about who they were making this show for. And there's still a lot of filler scenes, to be honest, in season 1. Not as many, but still quite a few. But like with Dreamy and Nova, for example, there's this whole episode centered around their relationship that really seems very slow paced and ultimately pointless. Like a lot of filler, and again, maybe it would have been better if it was better written, but their relationship came across as extremely insta-lovey and childish. Same with how they wrote Snow White and Prince Charming's relationship developing. It just wasn't that convincing. We see their love story unfold. They're the main couple of the show, and it's surprisingly anticlimactic and cliche. However, I stand by the fact that it's a very solid, enjoyable, fun season, especially for teens to watch, and it ends on a cliffhanger, which is great, with Emma breaking the curse. Then we have season 2, which I still really enjoyed. Everything is going good. I was blissfully unaware of how crazy everything would get, but I genuinely was really enjoying season 2 as well. Around episodes 1 to 9, the characters are dealing with the fallout of the curse being broken, having their memories back, and they're all furious at Regina and trying to get revenge on her. I love the drama, I'm enjoying it, but one of my biggest issues with the show, and it was still an issue in season 2, is that the real world Storybrooke scenes are always so much more juicy and exciting than any flashbacks they have to the past in the Enchanted Forest, which is a problem. But even though it was a downgrade from season 1, I still liked it. But there were some really good things, and also this show has some great humor and some really witty cast that really makes up for any of its failings. And that's why I have such a soft spot for this show. And I know a lot of you guys watching will too, so I'm not being critical here, but there was some illogical stuff. For example, the fact that Regina has done nothing but hurt them, and they've given her chance after chance, but yet Charming and Snow are willing to risk their life for her early on in season 2, not only once, but twice. Like at one point she's cursed by gold, and they're trying to help her rather than just letting her die, which probably at that point would have been best for everyone. Like, it's one thing to be neutral, but they were actively going out of their way to try and save her, even if it meant putting themselves at risk. And considering this woman had just cursed them and tried to kill them, and she was still very much dangerous, that's not being noble, that's just being stupid. Then the whole angry mob and the town are going after Regina, and the Charmings are like, guys, don't stoop to Regina's level, leave her alone, let's not be violent. Why not? Just let them do what they want. Like, it's honestly not your business. Regina tried to kill them, kill Emma. She almost killed Henry. She had them trapped and separated in a curse for 28 years. Had Belle locked away in a cell for 28 years. Gaslighted and manipulated Henry his entire childhood. And in the past tried to kill them and hurt them multiple times and separate them and put Snow White under a sleeping curse and massacre entire villages. And you're risking your lives for this woman. So that was a bit comical to me, a bit silly. But as season 2 warmed up, as we got into it, it did get better. It was awesome to see Hook and Regina and the Charmings and Emma all forced to be on the same side and working together. And we start to see hints that Regina wants to be better, and she's in this very uncomfortable phase of her character development where she knows she should do better, and it's really interesting to watch. Another subplot I loved is how we found out who Henry's father and Rumpelstiltskin's son is, and it was this super juicy plot twist and revelation that I loved and actually made a lot of sense. The fact that Neal was also Rumpel's son and it's the same person really was logical, considering that he had no respect for the law or the real world. And of course he wouldn't, because he considers himself a fairy tale character. And it made so much sense. And when Rumpel is reunited with his son and confronts him in the New York apartment, it's one of the most emotional and juicy scenes in the entire series, and it worked really well.
Who's this?
My son.
What?
Is that Baelfire?
I need you to stay in the other room for a little while longer, okay? Come on.
Wait, how old are you?
Don't answer him.
How old are you, kid?
11! Now, why is everyone yelling? Mom?
Is this my son?
It was a bit annoying though, because earlier in season 1, Rumpel had been tricked into thinking August was his son, and so he confessed his regrets to August in a really beautiful way, and the way he worded it was perfect. He couldn't have done it better. So it's a shame that that great, juicy, emotional monologue was delivered to the wrong character that wasn't actually his son, but it's okay. I'll forgive them. Towards the end of season 2, we started to get a bit messy again, because rather than it being its own season, it's like it was just planting clues to lead up to Neverland and season 3. And then again, we're still going strong with season 3. I'm enjoying it. It's fun. I can watch a few episodes a day, no problem. And a really strong season. I also love when the show plays on comedy with these characters hating each other for no reason, and then they're self-aware and they have these moments where they realize how ridiculous it is that they're so petty and hate each other so much. They're some of the best moments of the show. For example, in season 3, episode 1, one of my favorite scenes is when a fight breaks out on board the Jolly Roger and everyone's just trying to kill each other because they're all forced to. They're all one big family, but they all hate each other. It's genius. And they're forced to work together for Henry's sake, but none of them have anything in common. And none of them like each other, but they're forced to work together towards a common goal. And there's nothing I love seeing more than family and enemies who don't like each other finally becoming family and bonding. It's just, it warms my heart. I love it so much. I love it. But anyway, they're fighting on board the Jolly Roger, and Regina's trying to kill Snow White, and she's like, "You ruined my life." And Snow White's like, "I was 10, which again just made me laugh so much, because it made me realize how ridiculous it is that Regina's been holding a grudge against Snow White for years for a mistake Snow White made when she was a literal child. It's so funny. And Snow White's like, "No, you ruined my life." And then Snow White punches Regina in the face. And since Snow White had always been such a goody two-shoes earlier, I was like, yes, bring the drama. Like, oh, it's so, we needed that. We needed that punch. And I am completely in love with this idea of the characters going to Neverland. First of all, we needed a change of scenery because Storybrooke was getting crusty, but also it was such a good idea. Peter Pan, Neverland, and the original story of Peter Pan was always a little bit unsettling to me. So I love that they embraced that and they went for a dark and twisted version of Neverland with these kids being trapped on this island that seems to have a mind of its own, and Peter Pan actually being this really creepy guy who's effectively brainwashing and keeping these teens on his island. It worked so much better, and I love it when the show doesn't go down the fluffy path, but it keeps things a bit dark and moody and angsty. I loved it. There were still some really boring subplots, like Ariel. I wanted to skip most of her scenes, but there was good stuff too, like the Zelena subplot, back when Zelena was still a good character, and she as a villain works really well. Is she pathetic? Yes. Are her motivations lame? Is she whingy? Yes, but I liked her as a villain, and I liked her rivalry with Regina. I thought it was funny, and it was kind of nice for once to have a villain who's just a bit pathetic and just wallowing in self-pity. Like, it's really funny. And we had another great villain in Pan, who was one of my favorite in the series, and his rivalry heating up with his father. Rumple. Then we have Hook and Emma's romance heating up, and we have time travel in the finale, and all of those things are perfect. Romance, drama, family drama, Neverland. It's a recipe for success. And I love the plot twist that Peter Pan was not only not on Henry's side, but he was also Rumple's dad, because we were having all these flashbacks to Rumple's dad, and I was like, okay, how is this relevant? And it's because him and Peter Pan are the same person. I loved it. It made so much sense. It wasn't tacky, it just worked. I don't care if everyone's like, oh, it's too much because it means all the characters are related. I want them to all be related. Bring the drama, bring the incredibly confusing family tree, which I'll probably talk about in another video. Bring it all. Also, by the way, this is indeed a series that I've been working on for what feels like my entire life. So subscribe if you want to see the rest of the videos in this series. But I loved Pan as a villain because there's a lot of abandonment in this show and parents leaving their kids. But Pan seemed to be the only villain who had absolutely no remorse and was never supposed to be a dad and was just a terrible dad, hands down. And he wasn't like redeemable, he was just a jerk. And it's really funny too how Pan wants to give everyone a fair shot to fight him and to find Henry, because he really believes in, he calls it good form, and not cheating and not playing games and actually giving people a riddle they can solve. And it's so funny though, because when he was a Malcolm in his past life, I suppose, he was a total scam artist and a cheater and a coward. So that highlighted to me that Pan was a masquerade of everything that Malcolm wished he could be and wanted to be. Malcolm was lame and weak and a cheater, and Peter Pan is brave and has people that respect him, and he stays young forever. And it's not like it was a random twist that came out of nowhere. There were many signs that Peter Pan wasn't who he said he was through his vocabulary, the way he spoke like he was meant to be an older man, and also a few things he said to Rumple about father and son. And you think he's talking about Henry and Neal, but he's actually talking about him and Rumple, and you don't realize that at the time. And it's not just the dialogue that makes it good, it's also the actors for both Malcolm and Peter Pan who completely smash it out of the park. But the worst part of this whole season really is killing off Neal, because killing off Neal really destroyed that core theme of family, which was so important to the show, and we really needed him. We needed to see his relationship with his son Henry develop. It was the only time that Henry actually had good scenes was when he was with his dad, and also it was relevant because he was the whole reason for Rumple going along with the curse and doing everything he did. He gave Rumple a reason to be good and a reason to live. And so killing off Neal, that was the moment that the show started to go downhill, if you had to pinpoint it. And I know everyone loved Rumple, but it actually made much more sense to kill him off, because at that point, by the end of season 3, his arc, his redemption was finalized, and Neal, there was so much more that he had to do and so much unfinished business that he had. So as a character, it just didn't make sense to end it there for him. It's like they felt threatened by Neal, the writers I mean, as a romantic rival, and they couldn't figure out any other way of getting Hook and Emma together, so they thought the only way was to just kill Neal. And in general, the third season was the last really great one we got. I feel like the 11th episode of the third season, Going Home, was so dramatic it felt like a finale, and maybe that's where the show should have ended. But anyway, let's get into season 4. This season was not bad at all, but there were a lot of bad things about it. And so it was a good season, but the show was starting to lose its mind just a little bit, even though I still liked it. I was starting to get very concerned with the introduction of more modern Disney characters like Anna and Elsa, because it seemed like a distraction from the darker Grimm's fairy tale concept they started with. And it was a bit lame that Frozen comes out and that same year Once Upon a Time brings in Anna and Elsa. Like, it just feels very cheap, and it doesn't really do the show justice. It's tacky, you know? And luckily they managed to pull it off, because Anna and Elsa were really well cast, Kristoff was amazingly cast, and their dialogue and personalities were actually, in my opinion, more likable than in the movie. So somehow they managed to save it, which is actually quite miraculous, because it could have been so much tackier than it was. But unfortunately, this kind of foreshadowed a stream of bringing in characters that aren't your traditional fairy tale characters. Hook and Emma are also a real highlight of season 4. They're really great. You see them falling in love, and it's written much better than it was in season 3. You start to understand why they actually like each other, and you see a lot of her arc of her realizing that she needs to stop pushing him away. And it was honestly adorable how worried he was when Elsa almost killed her by accident. It was so, so sweet. And I really love the Dairy Queen / Ingrid subplot, who's another villain that again, they actually did well on, and they made her a villain that actually legitimately was redeemable. And I also loved how her plan was to make everyone go evil and start attacking each other and to just get really angry for no reason, which they did. So they all start attacking each other, trying to kill each other. And the minute the curse fades, they all start laughing and fooling around, realizing how ridiculous they must have looked. I just loved that scene. And the Queen had her faults. She was weirdly obsessed with Emma. She seemed like a stalker. She was always talking about her, like it seemed very possessive. I don't know if there was more to it for her, like if there was this weird romantic, I have no clue. It was just really weird how she was all about Emma and thinking about her all the time and thinking she needed Emma. But she did her good things too. And also I appreciated her freeing Sydney and actually staying true to her word and letting him go after he helped her, because he was trapped in the mirror for so long, kind of being everyone's slave, which is so problematic, by the way. Like Regina just kept him there and used him and he enjoyed it. Like he just was always there for her, and then he'd get mad, but then he'd go back to obeying her again. And it was just very, very weird. As you can imagine, for many reasons that doesn't sit right with me. But in general, the way that the show treats its characters who aren't white is worrying. I had a black Rapunzel, which was great, but she was barely there. And then when they do have a new character like Marion, what's her name, and Tamara, you're like, okay, this could be something, and then they end up just being terrible characters or killed off. But the show really started to lose me towards the end of season 4. They have this subplot of an author, and there's way too much time spent on his backstory. Isaac, whatever his name is, who knows, who cares, and his plan to like hurt everyone, and it was just really, really boring. They had some good parts, like exploring Emma's childhood, her childhood friend Lily. She turns into this dragon and she's going crazy, and Mary Margaret / Snow White is trying to help and runs towards her. Why would you run towards a moving dragon? That was so embarrassing. It makes me cringe every time I watch that scene. Then she gets knocked out. Who's surprised? Why would you sprint? I don't know what she was trying to accomplish. But anyway, I let it slide. I let it slide because at that point I was still enjoying the show. I still liked it. The Elsa Anna subplot went on for way too long, to be honest. It was very, very slow. So I'm being a bit too kind here because the show's nostalgic for me. It went on for way too long, but it was sweet. It was cute. But then you have season 5, and that's one of the worst seasons of the show, aside from season 7. It was so boring. And I'm just going to be repeating myself when I talk about season 6 and 7, because this was a problem that stayed in 5, 6, and 7. It's so boring, man. It's so boring. Like, I'm a reviewer. I have to sit there and watch this. And I'm just like, please give me something. Like, the water is drying up. We're in a drought. We're in a drought of good stories. So slow. Like, I don't know how they got renewed for that, because they had nothing. They were running out of ideas. They were just throwing ideas at the wall and seeing if something stuck. Like, it was terrible. It was so boring. And from season 5 onwards, this is where this very unfortunate thing happens, where they start playing around with their characters because they don't know what to do with them. So they start assassinating all of them one by one and undermining their arcs that they wrote so well earlier. No, they just start messing it all up. This happened the last time I watched the show. I started to zone out at season 5. The same thing happened this time. Season 5 starts, I switch off. Weirdest thing. Again, there's this 6-week time jump where they lose their memories for that period of time. And I was like, okay, I'm getting a little bit sick of this. There's a lot less humor. It's like the fun's been sucked out of it in season 5. It just was a lot less funny. So that really affected my enjoyment. It gets very repetitive from this point until season 7. Way too much. We're missing our memories. Another dark curse. We've been separated and we need to find each other again. It's just annoying. More sleeping curses, or Rumple needing to redeem himself after doing something bad and then messing up again, kind of in a loop. There's this big part of Emma's character journey of her going evil and like being possessed with this dark magic and made into the Dark One, which it's possibly my least favorite storyline in the entire series. I don't know why. I don't know why I dislike it even more than the Camelot subplot, but it does not work. She is such a good person, and seeing her in this villain role is just comical to me. Like, she's not a villain by heart. Stop trying to make it like that. Stop. stop everything. Her and her parents and their relationship is one of the most important parts of the show, and yet when this is happening and she's turned against them and she's gone evil, we barely see them interacting or see the trauma that it brings her parents, and that just makes no sense to me. It's just all about her and Hook. Forget Hook, screw Hook. What about her and her parents? And the dumbest thing is they do this weird plot twist, which is so dumb, that Hook finds out that he was actually the Dark One, but Emma hadn't wanted to tell him, and so she's like putting on this front of being the Dark One, but Hook is actually the Dark One. So it's so dumb because this is meant to be about Emma's arc. It's meant to be her thing, her time in the spotlight. And they take it and twist it and make it into Hook's arc when it wasn't even meant to be his thing. Like, get your own storyline, Hook. Go away. No one wants you here. So she's letting all her family and friends thinking that she's evil and kind of withdrawing from them. Why? Just tell them. There's no reason that you wouldn't tell them. And then not only do we have Rumple being the Dark One, it switches to Emma, and now Hook's the Dark One apparently, and now he's going evil and trying to kill everyone or send them to the underworld or whatever he's doing. Why? Does he have no self-control? And I can't even tell you how bad of an impact this had on Hook and Emma's relationship, which was cute beforehand, and they just dragged it through the mud. They milked it dry, and you couldn't even remember that these two used to be a cute couple because they ruined them. It was just too much of a strain on their relationship. Then we have this new character, Merida. This show has too many characters. We didn't need another one. She was so forced, annoying. Don't know why she was there. I can't stand her. Kill her. Get rid of her, please. We have so many characters in the show, like Mulan or Granny or Red, that we could have brought in, but instead we bring in a new one. We didn't need that. Same with the Camelot subplot. Too many characters. We didn't need to meet King Arthur and Guinevere. I get they were going for the whole creepy cult thing, which is a great concept, but they did not pull it off at all. Just can't write well when you've got that many characters. They're all going to end up underdeveloped as a result. It's too much. And apparently we're meant to believe that Regina, who was the queen, doesn't know how to dance at a ball. Come on. And Henry, Emma's son, gets this pathetic romance subplot with Violet, which I couldn't stand, and it got way more screen time than it needed to. Then we find out they're going to go to the underworld, which is the second really big subplot, and I was like, great, this will be exciting. And they go to the underworld, and it's just, I mean, I like the orangey filter, but it's just a creepier, emptier version of Storybrooke with a filter. Do you know how lazy that is? They couldn't even get them a new set or a new location. There were so many mistakes in season 5. I don't know where to start. This was an absolute shambles. 1. Zelena's forced redemption arc. Rumple and Belle being too toxic and ruining what was actually quite a nice ship. 3. Not committing to Emma being evil. 4. Killing off Robin. 5. Lost track. The whole Hook going evil storyline. 6. Henry's relationship. No one wanted that. No. Literally, who asked for that? No one. 7. A bland, boring, pointless finale. 8. Them somehow managing to make Hades a bad character. 9. Hades' blue hair. Enough said. 10. Merida and everything about her. Remove her. Arthur and Guinevere and that whole confusing subplot. The fact that they dropped other storylines from earlier that were in season 4 and didn't continue developing them, like, ugh, the whole thing. Selena's redemption arc in this season was the worst written in the show by far, like miles ahead. Zelena was awful, and her backstory wasn't nearly tragic enough for you to have a reason to truly feel bad for her. So she came across, as I said earlier, as whingy, whiny, rude, ungrateful, entitled, and projecting a lot of her anger, blaming people for misfortunes in her life that had nothing to do with them, and just constantly in this really strong victim mentality. So she starts randomly in the space of like 2 episodes becoming a great person because she had a baby, and apparently motherhood changes you. And then she becomes friends with Regina, but then suddenly when Regina starts pushing her away, Zelena just drops the whole thing and turns to the dark side again to go and side with the evil queen. But then they're still calling her redeemed after that and trying to run with that, even though she's not. They should have just killed her in season 3 when they were going to kill her in that jail cell and just left it at that. And another problem with season 5 is that it meant that everything that happened in season 4 felt kind of like meaningless, because in season 4 they started developing these subplots that are set up as cliffhangers and things, and you think they'll be continued in season 5, but they're just dropped. For example, David made this really interesting comment about how he was sick of just being seen as Prince Charming, and all he's known for is that he woke Snow White up with True Love's kiss, and he wants to be known for something else. So you think he's gonna like get a new job or something, but then that whole thing is just forgotten about in season 5. Additionally, in season 4, we had this idea of Emma's childhood friend and her being a dragon and her wanting to reconnect with her mum, and then she's just not a thing in season 5. And we had the character of Will Scarlet, and I thought he'd be this really big thing later in season 5, and then he wasn't. When you rewatch season 4, you realize how many of those subplots were pointless. So this show really has entirely too much stuff going on. They come up with all these great ideas, but then they kind of throw them in the trash and they start a new idea, but the other thing wasn't finished. And this is what brings us to season 6. It was getting way too confusing with the flashbacks at this point of the enchanted forest compared to the real world, increasingly convoluted and hard to follow what was happening now compared to what was happening in the past. And those flashbacks we see become increasingly less relevant, and you're kind of like, is this filler? What does this mean? And the villains from season 6 onwards just get progressively worse. They're just not great. For example, the evil queen, Regina's alter ego. I don't want to see that. Like, we already saw her as the evil queen. Don't need that. I'm trying to watch this. I'm trying to concentrate, but everything's so insanely boring. I literally, Then we have the musical episode. What were they thinking? And you know what? If these actors are Broadway trained, fabulous. They have great voices. I didn't know they were so talented. Brilliant. You can't just dump on us a musical episode in season 6. If you wanted this to be a musical show like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, great. You should have brought it in and had 2 musical episodes a season from the beginning, or maybe establish earlier that they're singers and stuff and show them singing here and there so that we're kind of used to it, because you have not like prepared us. I was not prepared. And this show has a huge problem with repetitive story arcs, which becomes a really big issue in like season 6 and 7 and 5 because it's so boring. I'll give you an example. So in season 3, it was already getting annoying because we had Emma and Henry erasing their memories, being separated from their family from like the 3rd time and needing to go to New York, not believing in magic. And Hook has to come and re-remind them that magic is real. Kind of annoying. Then we have like Zelena and her erasing everyone's memory for 6 months or a year and them not knowing what happened in that time frame. And it just keeps happening. Like the season 4 finale had this idea of everyone's happy endings being flipped and reversed. So they don't really remember who they are because they think they're different people and Henry has to go and fix everything. And it's okay, I don't mind it, but then it just gets annoying in season 6 with the Black Fairy casting a curse and then Emma not really remembering who she is and Henry needing to convince her. Like at that point, you ran it into the ground. Edward, Adam, give me something here. Give me a good subplot. Like, we're not dumb, we're noticing the similarities. Season 7. So this was disgusting. The only way that I can mentally be okay with season 7 is if I think of it as a different show altogether, like a spin-off or a reboot or a sequel. Because if you think of it as Once Upon a Time, and that's Endgame, it's just gonna upset you, so don't do that to yourself. Emma, Snow, Hook, Charming all have their happy endings and they live together in Storybrooke, which is beautiful, and they kind of finalize that in season 6, but then rather than leaving it in season 7, they bring in this new cast of characters and they only keep on a few of the actors from the past, like Hook and Rumple and Regina, but everyone else is gone. And I don't know about you guys, but I was very attached to the characters at this point because my problem is never really with the characters, it's with the plot and the writing. But I love these characters, I want to see them happy, I'm very attached to them, and I don't care about this new cast. I have no interest in them, and they do not have remotely the same amount of chemistry that the original cast had, particularly between the love interests, so I don't want to see it. Take it away. And we have, rather than new characters, just reiterations of the same characters from the previous seasons, such as Cinderella, Rapunzel, Jack, Hansel, Gretel, and the Blind Witch. I don't want to see that. Like, why are you trying to replace Cinderella? I know who Cinderella was, and that's not this Cinderella. Stop. Cinderella existed. I knew her, we knew her, we all loved her. I mean, she was a bit weird because all she ever did was like be pregnant or be talking about being a mother and carrying a child. But you know what? I love that for her, empowering. I don't want another Cinderella. I liked the first one. And sure, we have Regina, Hook, and Rumple there, but they're not the same. They're weird, especially because they're bringing the wish realm back into things. So confusing, because you're like, is this the same one? Or is this like the wish, what? It's just an all-time low for the show. We knew Charming and Emma. We grew up with them. We don't want to see them replaced with new people in the final season. Like, just end it. End it. To an extent, I have no problem reusing the idea of memories and memory loss and curses, because I understand this is an integral part of fairy tales, and fairy tales themselves are very cyclical in structure, right? They have often the same formula as well of, you know, curse, happy ending, and they have a lot of curses, and it's okay then to kind of go with that as a theme, but only to an extent. And by season 7 I just found it really annoying, because it's like Henry grown up, but him not really remembering that magic's a thing, and his daughter turning up at his door being like, hey, I'm your daughter that you didn't know existed and magic is real. And it's like meant to be this like cool full circle moment, but it's just really boring. Even Hook in a police uniform isn't enough to save this show. The characters are annoying, and it gives fan fiction vibes, or you know what it feels like? I don't even need to say anymore. It feels like a Hallmark movie. So now let's talk about a few key issues in the show, from redemption arcs to the strange portrayal of true love's kiss. So redemption arcs. This show has a hilarious obsession with getting villains to do the most despicable things and then finding a way to flip it on its head and give them a sympathetic backstory and have us like them by the end and have them be fully redeemed and reintegrated into society. You know what? I have no issue with that. I think there's plenty of people that, let's say, went to jail and then became better people, and all they needed was some kindness and to be reintegrated into society. And that's fine. I've had many stories that are very beautiful about people turning their lives around. I know it's possible, and I know that people can change, and I so want to believe that for my own sanity. However, in this show, it's the fact that they don't just do it with a few, it feels like they're doing it with most of them, and it feels a bit weak and a bit spineless rather than just letting people be bad guys. It just, I don't like it, and I don't know why, but you know what? It's okay if you even want to redeem all of them. It's the fact that they redeem them badly as well, like Hook and Zelena and Arthur. If it's not done well, then I don't want to see it. Rumples started out great, and then they threw the whole thing in the trash. So if you're going to do it, at least commit to it, and please do it well. Instead, it felt like just trying to erase and make us forget about all the bad, heinous stuff they did in the past and not really have them take responsibility for it. Rumple, Regina, Hook and Zelena, look, I love them as characters. I think they're great, and it makes me sad to say this, but they were like really terrible people, like really, really bad. I can make some exceptions and some leeway because this is a fairy tale world and I understand the rules are different. In the same way I kind of made an exception for Charmed with Cole's redemption, because I was like, it's a magical universe, it's different, it's not the real world, but only to a point. And these people like Zelena and Regina, they were like evil, like unforgivable, irredeemable with the stuff that they did. It wasn't just a few things, it was like continual patterns of behavior of being awful, and I don't know if you can ever come back from that. There's a very annoying favoritism of Regina and Hook, like they're the writer's favorites, and it becomes really annoying as the show goes on when you see the double standards and how they're treated compared to other characters. It also has such strange and twisted ideas of morality and what it means to be good and what it means to be evil. Look at the Blue Fairy. She's meant to be one of the nice characters in the show, but you can't tell me she's not a villain. She may as well be, because she's so awful. And there's this idea of if you stand up for yourself, that means you're mean. I don't like that message. It's not true. For example, Belle saying to Rumplestiltskin, I know that I was locked up by Regina for 28 years, but please don't go and hurt her. Like, be the bigger person. I'm sorry. Are you a complete doormat? If you were locked up for 28 years, wouldn't you want some kind of consequences for your abuser? And this idea that the good people don't kill doesn't factor in things like self-defense, like everyone being all shocked that Emma killed Cruella. Are you guys joking? Do you know who Cruella is? They're always pushing that Snow White and Charming are heroes, but then they have Snow White and Charming like abducting a baby, and they try and reframe it as, oh, it was a mistake, but they're like covering it up for so long. And it just, am I meant to see these guys as heroes now? Why are you trying to bring them down to the level of the bad guys? I think it was meant to be a moment to make them more relatable for viewers and show that not everyone's perfect, but it just made them look like jerks. I don't care if they were tricked, like it was just, the whole thing was a mess. And that made it even more convoluted around the show's boundaries and rules of black and white and what morality is, because Emma's furious at her parents for like abducting their baby. She's so angry at them to a comical degree, how much her anger is extended, because then she goes and forgives people like Regina and Gold who've done far worse. And then she starts dating someone like Hook and marrying him. Do you know what Hook did in his past? He was like killing people, he betrayed Ariel, and he hurt people. He even made jokes, I don't know if it's true or not, but he made jokes about how he would get women drunk in order to sleep with them. And the idea of them like sending Cora to heaven in season 5. She didn't deserve to, I'm sorry, why are we redeeming her as well? She committed some really big crimes. She was kind of the start of everything in the show. She literally was an awful mother to Regina, and a few nice apologies just isn't going to take that back. You redeem Ursula as well, and Zelena, it doesn't leave very many genuine villains left. And I have mixed feelings about this because I think it's kind of cute. The show is meant to be escapism, and it's kind of sweet that everyone can still stay friends after this with no real hard feelings, and they can just forgive stuff because it ties into the cheesy, fluffy fairy tale aspect of this show and the idea of hope and that people can change and that everyone deserves a happy ending. So I understand thematically what they were trying to do with it. And I know there's this belief that if you just believe in people and you see the good in them and you choose hope and you choose love, then anyone can be redeemable. And yeah, maybe it's like a bit childish or naive, but it's delivered with so much heart and love that it's hard to stay mad at it, and it makes for some really sweet, great storylines. And so maybe I would feel better about it if all the redemptions were written like really excellently, but it's the fact that they feel forced. And sometimes I think it's okay to commit to people just being a villain, like Peter Pan. Just have him be mean. It's okay. Sometimes not everyone's gonna change and be forgiven. And then we have RAPE culture, which is a huge issue in the show. The Mary Sue, an article, says, when the huntsman is being held by the guards, Regina orders them to bring him to her chambers. She is going to RAPE Graham. She has complete control over him and he cannot say no. She says, you are now mine, my pet. And then in the real world, Regina basically, because she has Graham's heart, can control everything he does. In the fairy tale world and in the real world, when he doesn't have his memories, she is effectively essaying him. She's making him do whatever she wants. Even though he doesn't really like her, he keeps being drawn back to her and he doesn't know why. He's effectively her slave, and she is never held accountable for this. She also murders him and never faces consequences for it. And I don't even know if Emma even found out the truth about who killed Graham. Now, considering the huge stigma in our society about female violence against men, particularly sexually, it kind of shocks me that this was dealt with so disrespectfully and with absolutely no sensitivity to what Graham was going through. And that sends a really bad message. And Regina was going to attempt the same thing with David. She was trying to seduce him when he had no memories of who she was. And so if they'd slept together, he would have been sleeping with someone not really knowing who she was, and the fact that they hated each other. He was cursed, so he couldn't really have given her consent if he didn't actually understand who he was and who she was. Zelena and Robin Hood. Zelena was pretending to be Robin Hood's dead wife. She was pretending to be the wife and sleeping with him, and then he got her pregnant. That is so disgusting. And the fact that it's dealt with so casually, and not only that, but he's trying to be all noble and take care of the child he didn't want in the first place, and that she did that to him, and again, no accountability, and they still try and redeem her. It just felt like a really nasty excuse to kill off another character of colour on the show. Like, why? And Mother Gothel and Hook, same thing. Hook thinks he's with Rapunzel, but he's actually with Mother Gothel. How many times is this going to happen? This would have happened as well in the season 4 finale with Rumple and Belle, because he wanted to be the hero of the story, so he had the author rewrite him a life where he's the hero and everyone loves him. Even though him and Belle were broken up, this magical curse changed things, so he and Belle are together, and it's like she's almost had her memories wiped. But that's RAPE, because she can't give informed consent because she doesn't know who she is or who she's giving consent to. And she didn't want to be back together with you, and she hates your guts. And now you're playing house again, pretending to be husband and wife, but she don't want you. When Hook and Emma were fighting and when they didn't like each other, he pinned her down and he made this comment about how when he jabs her with his sword, she'll feel it, and it had very sexual undertones. And you can't deny the fact that when their relationship started, he was really relentlessly pursuing her and kind of ignoring the signs that she was giving that she wasn't interested, and very much being like, you may not see it now, but we'll be together. And that's kind of ignoring the fact that you're not reading the room. And she really, it's not even that she isn't interested, she actively dislikes you or doesn't trust you. And it's like the writers think, oh, he was a pirate, as the Mary Sue points out. Because he was a pirate, that somehow means that it's normal for pirates to do these things of like raping women. And so it's okay, like it's part of being a pirate, and he'll just stop being a pirate. Like kidnap, murder, sexism, it's cool because that was his pirate version or something, and we'll just water it down as the show goes on. But like, that's not how it works. He tried to kill Belle by shooting her with a gun and erasing her memory. He never apologizes to her properly for that either. And he had repeatedly tried to kill Emma as well, and then falls in love with her very randomly, like out of nowhere. And thing is with Regina, we saw all the bad stuff she got up to in her backstory and her past. We didn't really with Hook, so we don't know the extent of all the bad stuff that he got up to. It might have been really bad. Now, True Love's Kiss. TV Fanatic wrote an article entitled How True Love and True Love's Kiss Lost All Meaning on Once Upon a Time. And it was really interesting. They basically talked about how there's a lot of contradictory messages in the show about True Love's Kiss, and also when it works and when it doesn't work. And so by the end of the show, it was just a plot device that they used whenever it was necessary. Initially, it's presented as this very rare and powerful thing, and Rumplestiltskin says it's the one thing that can transcend realms and break any curse. It's the most powerful force in the world. We see that Charming and Snow are special, and Emma makes a big deal out of the fact that she's born from true love, and Charming manages to wake Snow White up with True Love's Kiss, and Emma even has it with Henry, her son, and she kisses him to wake him up from a curse, which at the time was very revolutionary, to give the show credit, because that was done before Frozen. So Once Upon a Time was actually the OG, and they're the ones that did that idea that true love's kiss doesn't have to be romantic, it could be familial or platonic. And to give the show some credit, it worked really well. But as the show went on, they just started to really erode the specialness of this true love's kiss thing. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And with other characters, suddenly they all have true love's kiss as well. And so you wonder how special it actually is. And Prince Charming really casually said to this girl who was trying to wake her fiance up, oh, have you tried True Love's Kiss yet? As if it's just like this casual thing that everyone shares. Or that you can have multiple true loves, because True Love's Kiss worked with Emma and Graham, but then it also worked with her and Hook. So are they both her true loves? And the article points out that it's made into this rare mystical thing, but it just isn't. And it also seems to be very dependent on what mood you're in, like if you're feeling in love in that moment or not. Like with Rumple and Belle, the curse didn't work because they were fighting at that time, but then it did work when they were happy at that time. But that implies that true love is kind of inconsistent and it just goes away if you've just had an argument or something. But then they contradict that in season 6 episode 7, because Snow White and Charming touched hands and they weren't even in love at that point, but this true love seed was planted, implying that true love and true love's kiss might work even when you're not in love yet, because you're fated to be in love. And so it's not about whether you're currently in love or not, it's that you're destined to be together. But then they contradict it, so the whole thing makes no sense. And there's even more contradictions around if true love's kiss works if you're in a dream, because sometimes it works, but then other times, like when Charming went into Snow White's dream in season 2 to save her, because they were in a dream, it didn't work. So do with that what you will. Now let's start with the characters. As I said earlier, they could have fixed the show, but what they needed to do if they did continue the show later was probably have the arcs for these characters finished at season 3 so they didn't ruin them, and then they could have brought a new cast in from seasons like 4 to 7, and they could have not redone characters like Cinderella. They could have just done new characters from mythology or other Grimm's fairy tale characters, or set it in a new world altogether. But honestly, my ideal situation would just be ending the show at season 3 and not bringing in a new cast or anything. If you can avoid it, I think it just works better. Like, I never really care for seeing a new cast, but if you had to do it, just really do a clean slate and maybe bring in characters from mythology or fables and legends and just do a completely different thing, then at least it wouldn't be at the expense of sacrificing the character arcs of like Emma and Rumple and ruining them. But there's lots of things you could have done that would have been better than what they did. Let's start off with Charming and Snow White. They really took their time casting the male actors in the show because they are just so handsome. Like, I genuinely don't know who to look at. But Snow White and Charming are such interesting characters. The fact that these two got married and fell in love in real life just speaks volumes to how adorable they are. Like, they're so great. And what's so funny is I normally hate infidelity in shows, but somehow in season 1, Mary, Margaret and David managed to make having an affair look innocent and naive and romantic and harmless. I also think it's really funny how they're always saying how they'll always find each other, which was literally Emma's profession before coming to Storybrooke, which is tracking down people and finding people. Now, for some reason, they decided to make Charming a shepherd before he became a prince. I guess to show that he grew in confidence and came into his own more. But I just find it really funny because he's so panicked about saving the farm. He keeps telling his mum, like, I need to become prince or king so I can get the money to save the farm. And the farm is just an expanse of green grass with no cows or animals or crops of any kind. But anyway, David / Prince Charming is overall kind, solid, normal, charming and wholesome and just a really great guy. I didn't love it in season 2 when Snow White said to him, we should kill Cora, and he was like, no, let's get someone else to do it, because it's like he wants to have someone else do the terrible crime and absolve them of the responsibility. Like, that's not how it works. So he could be a bit arrogant sometimes, but like, I can't make myself hate him. He's just so sweet. He gives such protective dad vibes. I just love it. He's such a dad. He's a real stand-up guy who'll do anything for his family, and what more can you ask? And I thought it was beautiful and heartwarming to see this idea of we will always find each other, them being reunited no matter what the odds and finding their way back to each other. It is truly beautiful. Some of the best moments in the show was Emma bonding with her parents and them being adorably embarrassing and cringy parents. But despite my extreme fondness for these characters, we have to be real here. David has virtually no character development from season 3 onwards. He feels like a one-trick pony, and so does Snow White. Her little thing, her little trick is that she keeps giving speeches about hope and how we need to be positive. And David's thing is saying, I will always find you and good always wins. And it's just all they've got. I don't mind that him and Snow are such similar people, but the fact they even share a heart at one point shows to me how they're not only similar, but they're often making the same mistakes, and they're both equally stagnant in character development from season 3. It's quite shocking that they could be the show's main cast, and yet the show is so confused about who they are and what storylines to give them. Look at characters like Regina and Emma and even Hook and Rumple, and then you look at Snow White and Charming and how little they've changed, and you're just like, oh. Also, couldn't they have given Mary Margaret a new haircut? 6 seasons of this horrific pixie cut. I'm so sick of it. But I find Snow White's whole do things for the greater good thing really annoying sometimes, especially if it means at the sacrifice of her own happiness or losing her daughter, like in season 3 episode 11, and she still reframes it as, oh, it's okay, it's for the best, like even if it means really bad things happening to her. Like, she's actually not self-serving enough sometimes, or she really romanticizes things and sees the best in people to an annoying extent. But overall, her and her husband do their best, and I think it's very odd when people say that they're annoying characters and they hate them, but then they like Regina and Rumple, because sometimes it's like, because they're already the good guys, they set such a high bar and high expectations that people hold them to an impossibly high standard and just expect so much from them and don't allow room for failure. The next character is Emma. Meet our main character, the sheriff with the weirdly amazing hair and eyelashes. Like, what is up with that? Like, seriously, why is it always perfectly curled in season 1? Damn. She looks so good. She's so beautiful. And she's also so like feisty and like gritty and badass, and I love her. She has this steel cut, rough, don't mess with me persona in season 1, which I love, and I love seeing her becoming more affectionate as the show goes on. Emma's arc, which I'll talk about next video or the video after that is about her character arc of overcoming abandonment issues and a denial of her own belief in magic and opening her heart to love. It is very much a hero's journey, but it annoys me how much this whole hero savior thing is pushed, with people calling her the savior every 2 seconds and her hand shaking as she has some premonition or flashback to something. Like, it's a bit much. Like, her constantly being like, oh my god, someone's in danger, I have to save them. That whole policeman rescue thing gets a bit annoying after a while, even though it's the point, I know, but I'm like, ugh, again. But I really loved her arc from season 1 to 4, and it was really great. And then they ruined it, obviously, like with everyone else in season 5 with the whole going dark thing. Also, I know the actress had really bad migraines, so maybe that has something to do with why they weren't putting makeup on her. But her makeup was always incredible in the earlier seasons, especially season 1 and 2, and they do eyelashes, like falsies, that she really needed because they opened up her eyes a lot. I'm not saying she's ugly without makeup, but I'm saying that when you're being filmed or you're on stage, I think it's important to have makeup. I can't even explain why. You just look a bit sick and pasty without it. And same with Snow White, it's like the makeup was too minimal. Later, I don't know why Emma in particular, she always looked so like pale, and I don't know why they stopped putting makeup on her and like doing her hair and everything in later seasons, but it just bothered me because it looked so good earlier. And no, it's fine if sometimes she's not wearing makeup, but she never was, like, ever. And I think Snow White stopped wearing the falsies as well, but that's such a shame because they gave it such a fairy tale flair. I've got a video about her coming soon, so stay tuned for that, and her hero's journey and everything. But the next character is Graham, the most tragic character in the show. It's funny how he seems so significant and important in season 1, and then we never see him again, and he just drops out of the show and he dies, and that's it. It just seemed cruel, his life, the way that Regina used him, and then the way he was killed off, and the way that he was barely brought up again and no one actually knew what happened to him. The reason Regina killed Graham is because he saw the real her, the one that she didn't want anyone to see, and it felt like he was picking Emma over her, and she felt like she couldn't use him anymore and she just couldn't stand it, so she killed him. But Graham, he was done so dirty. I mean, it's insane. And so the show at that point, they realized they wanted to redeem Regina. They knew they wanted to make her a better character. So I guess they thought, if we just sweep this under the rug, after a while, people will forget about it. And then we can redeem her without worrying about that and how we took it way too far. But the problem is, I didn't forget. And yeah, it was a good move to kill him off. It was shocking, it was dramatic. It showed how evil Regina was and the lengths that she would go to for revenge, but that's the problem. It made her a bit too evil. And also, he was such a nice, non-toxic love interest for Emma. He never had a bad boy, like, killer past, like, hook. He was just a really nice guy. Next character is Regina. So I love her. She's one of my favorites in the show. I love her sass, I love her humor, her spunk, and her confidence is so attractive. She's fun as a manipulative villain, and she's also excellent as a redeemed person or as an anti-hero who's trying to do better. I love her in all her forms. Her redemption arc from seasons 1 to 3 was very well written and believable. We see her relapsing in season 2 and trying to redeem herself for the wrong reasons, but ultimately by the end of season 3, she's a much better person. She's still wavering a bit in season 4, but ultimately comes good. Through her, the writers tell a story about the importance of redemption and taking accountability and fighting the darkness within you. She was the one who was constantly punished, who never got her happy ending, and was constantly reminded of the fact that she was a villain and didn't deserve happiness. She's the one who has to sacrifice herself, who has to apologize, who has to say, I messed up, I did the wrong thing. The issue is that as much as I love Regina as a good guy, she was kind of past the point of no return, and I feel like she's one of those people where you can't ever really make her a good guy because she was just so evil in season 1. I think people forget like how bad it was, even though I loved her redemption. I just don't know if it's believable. She was a manipulative, cruel, childish, gaslighting, horrible mass murderer. And it's like, if she says a few things like, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm sorry, we can just forgive that. No, you can't. She massacred an entire village in season 2, like for no reason. I always felt like I wanted Cole and Charm to be redeemed, and I wanted that for him because he was half human, half demon, and you could use the excuse of his demonic side being something he couldn't control, that he was born with, that literally took over him, like a natural disposition to evil. But with Regina, she didn't have that same excuse because she was just a nasty woman, and anything else is just excuses. Oh, but her mum abused her. Oh, but you know, Rumpel tried to like groom her into being the evil queen. I don't care. It doesn't excuse what she did. And Regina's constant problem in the show is finding someone else to blame when she's unhappy with her own life. As we see in the episode of Hansel and Gretel, she's sent many children in there to try and get something or take something, steal something, whatever, from the blind witch. But Hansel and Gretel are the first to succeed, which means that Regina has sent countless children in to the blind witch's cottage to be killed and eaten alive by her. So she's a child abuser as well. The thing is though, if you put aside how logical or believable it is, they actually smashed it out of the park with her character arc in a way that they really didn't with the other characters, as in it was gradual and it wasn't immediate, and it worked really well. Another thing that makes season 3 and 4 so good is her romance with Robin Hood. I thought they were such a great couple and had so much chemistry. But Robin Hood gets really annoying because after a while he just turns into this useless side character who's always in danger and needing to be saved. And then him dying at the end made it even more pathetic because so many other characters in this show have been redeemed. They brought Hook back from the dead, but they couldn't do the same thing for Robin, and I felt like that was actually really cruel because at that point Regina had done enough to earn a happy ending, and she had sacrificed herself and thrown herself under the bus many times to help others. And so it was actually quite nasty because she'd already lost her first love, and then she also lost this guy as well. It bothered me too the way they wrote her relationship with Robin Hood, because it's like obstacles kept getting in the way, like a baby or an ex-wife or whatever, but Robin kept finding reasons to not choose her, and it started to seem like she cared more about the relationship than he did. And I have to say that once her character arc was complete at the end of season, maybe not season 3, but like halfway through season 4, once her character arc was complete, after that even she became a boring and repetitive character because there was nothing else they could really do with her. So after Robin died, it went even more downhill in terms of like her progression as a character. Now we have Rumplestiltskin. He is such a good character, and the actor plays him phenomenally, and it was such a wonderful thing to see him in all these different roles, as evil Rumple, as a normal mortal man, as the dark one, as a hero, as the insecure evil guy who loves Belle. It was such a joy to see his insane acting range. But the writers did him dirty too. Whenever they needed him to be good for the plot, he was, and when they needed him to do something bad, he did something bad, and it was just, they had no sense of direction for his character. Who do we go to when we have a problem? Rumplestiltskin. It feels like he's interacted with every single one of the main cast without fail. All of them call on him, all of them know him in some way. It's a bit crazy. He was overused. Initially, it's like they were using him a little bit so it would be effective, but then it's like every single time the characters need something, they're calling on him, and it ruins it. Every character, it seems, has been forced to make some kind of deal with him, even though they know it comes at a huge risk and it's probably a bad idea. After Rumple sacrifices himself in season 3, that's where his arc should have ended, because he was perfectly redeemed at that point. And from seasons 1 to 3, his arc of becoming a better man was perfectly written and amazing. Ending the show, or ending his arc with him sacrificing himself and doing something brave, would have been absolutely wonderful, but instead they ruined it because they brought him back from the dead, and that's when it all went downhill. I wanted to see Rumple redeemed. He was more of a neutral force in the beginning, and they did start to redeem him really well in season 3, but then after that, when they start doing their dead, alive, evil, bad, blah, 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 blah. They're doing exactly, I swear, exactly with him what they did with Cole from Charmed. And it makes me angry that he lost his son Neal, and then he was kidnapped by Zelena and effectively brainwashed and like tortured for, what, a year? Like, he went through all this shit. He would have had insane trauma and PTSD, but people still want to villainize him and not help him, even though what he needed was rehabilitation and kindness. Because everyone else looked pretty bad at that point too, so they wanted to make him look worse, and they just kept ruining him and Belle and his morality as a character, just making him an asshole. He and Belle are one of the worst couples in TV history. I quite liked them at the beginning. I thought they were really sweet, and then they were just, and season 2 I was really vibing, and they ruined them. He lies to her when she tells him everything. He deceives her, and she is so out of his league, it's not even funny. Like, she is so much of a better person, and I don't know what he's bringing to this relationship aside from stress and disappointment. I like the whole Beauty and the Beast idea, but by season 5 it's just this ridiculous cycle of him continually letting her down and breaking her heart and then needing to win her back in some way and then choosing power and dark magic over her again, and then it just repeats like that. Them being together at the end sends such an unhealthy message, it's crazy, and I would so much rather they didn't do that. They should have had Belle break up with him and learn to invest in herself, in her own life and in her own potential, rather than trying to fix this deadbeat loser. And at points they wanted to prop up Hook and make him look like the good guy, and so they would intentionally have Rumpelstiltskin treat him badly so you'd feel bad for Hook, and yeah, it made us feel bad for Hook. That was at the expense of making Rumpelstiltskin look bad. I really missed the sweetness and the innocence that was there in his and Belle's relationship, like in the Skin Deep episode, because it was just really gross and tarnished, and he was just super controlling and creepy by the end, like in season 6, wanting to keep her locked on this boat for her own safety and all this. He was just way too much, and it started to become very much, rather than him being good for her, it was like you and me against the world, everyone else sucks, and he didn't care about anyone else but her, or even seem to have any friends aside from her, and that's so unhealthy. As for Belle, Belle is the most pointless and shit character in the entire show. Hands down. Everything she does revolves around Rumpelstiltskin. She has nothing going on. She has no life. She has no personality, no friends, no storylines of her own, aside from we need to help Rumple and talking about Rumple. And when Rumple's not in the picture, they have no idea who she is without how she exists outside of Rumple. So she might maybe do some research for Emma to help her with some case, or maybe do some work in the library, but like there's nothing. She doesn't actually have any friends or even feel that connected to the main cast. The original Disney cartoon Belle was actually a much better character because she didn't fall in love with the Beast when he was being an asshole. She thought he was an asshole. She didn't like him. She put him in his place. She tried to leave multiple times. She only started to like him when he softened and when he was nice to her, and even then she only truly fell for him once he freed her and let her go. But she wasn't earlier. She wasn't falling for potential, whereas Belle in the TV show is very much falling for potential, but Belle in the show is trying to change and control Rumple. Rather than loving him for who he is, she's trying to make him into the guy that she wants him to be, and that's not the guy that he actually is. She's believing in a fantasy while he's still killing people, torturing people, making deals, and very much wanting power. That's a very different story. She also was still technically his prisoner and liking him. She's obsessed with changing him, and when she found out that he was cursed, rather than accepting it, she's like, well, I'll break the curse and then we can be together. I need to break the curse first though, which again shows that she doesn't like him for who he is. With Belle, when she fell for the Beast, she didn't actually know that he was a prince, so she genuinely ended up liking him for who he was in the cartoon, which was so much better. And let's be real, did Belle ever really love Rumple? Because it felt like she was always the morality police, always calling him out and basically checking in on his behavior and saying, Rumple, don't do that, and never felt safe, never trusted him, constantly reminding him not to do something bad. If you don't even trust your partner to not go and murder people, do you really love them? She made this sort of very weak friendship with Ariel, and then Ariel disappeared again, which made me realize how she never actually has anything going on outside of Rumple. Ariel was never actually going to stay in Storybrooke, so she wasn't even really a viable option for being a long-term friend for Belle. Belle started to connect with Ruby, and then that whole storyline kind of disappeared too. It was just really, really disappointing, and for such a big character with so much screen time, it's shocking how little she does. So I've got a video about her and Rumple coming out next week, so stay tuned for that. And the next character is Hook. I have so many conflicted feelings about Hook, it's insane. On one hand, I love the character and his charm and his wit, and the show wouldn't be the same without him. But he really split the fandom down the middle. He introduced as a villain, and it's shocking how awful he was, how aggressive he was. And it's crazy even that he and Emma became a thing. He wanted to be her boyfriend seemingly out of nowhere in season 3A, and it wasn't very convincing that he would suddenly switch and have all these really genuine, heartfelt, ooey gooey fanboy feelings for her when earlier he'd been like this cutthroat pirate. I don't think it would have worked with anyone else, but luckily the actors who played Hook and Emma had so much chemistry, they actually managed to pull it off. It's quite remarkable. But Her love for Hook actually made Emma a weaker character in some senses because she was putting him above her family and putting her family at risk in order to save Hook. She was even considering letting her parents stay in the sleeping curse in order to save Hook, or, oh, let's go to the underworld because Hook needs our help. And the fact that he said that he and Rumple would have a truce, but then he was so stupid as to try and black Rumple again in season 4, that really rubbed me the wrong way. His character arc was extremely inconsistent and it wasn't a linear progression. He made some progress and then he took 2 steps back. So it was a bit confusing and it felt like the weak, tacky version of Regina's character arc with a lot less backstory and a lot less of a convincing motivation to be good. Hers was like, I'm gonna do it for me and for my son. And for Hook, it's like, oh, well, I've got a crush on a pretty girl, so I guess I'll just help the Charmings out on their mission. And if I just hang out with them long enough, then I'll like turn into one of the good guys. And it wasn't quite as convincing. We never saw him like internally struggle with his choices and morality. It was just like 1 minute he's a bad guy and the next minute he's in love with Emma. And that effectively made him a weak character. Luckily, once he was redeemed, he was a really solid character and I loved him, but I wish they could have just written it a bit more effectively. Definitely his relationship with Emma was a lot more convincing in like season 5 and at the end when they're happy together, but it was just the shift was a bit abrupt, a bit too abrupt for my liking. The Blue Fairy, this is my least favorite character in the whole series. She's so annoying and so immoral and so preachy and gross. She says that fairies don't lie, but she literally lies all the time. She also tried to stop Dreamy and Nova from being together and ruin their relationship for no reason, just because she just didn't want them to date. She also exiled Tinkerbell and took her wings because Tinkerbell disagreed with her on something. She abuses her power. Her nastiness is never properly addressed throughout the series. And the actress, I think, had stated that she wanted to play the character a bit evil in case the writers decided to go down the evil route, but why didn't they? Like, she would have been the best villain ever. And for someone that has so much power, there's all this bad stuff going on in the world and she's shockingly unhelpful. The next character is August. I don't know how I feel about him. I understand that he abandoned Emma as a child. He was too young, it was too much responsibility. But later, when they were adults and he was adult, why did he try and stop Neal and Emma from being together and take the money and tell Neal that he couldn't see Emma? Why? Why couldn't Neal have been the one to bring Emma to Storybrooke? Why did he separate them? And because we didn't get enough of his backstory, he just seems like this very conniving, meddling, and selfish adult. And I'm really bothered by the way they gave August his happy ending by erasing all his memories and transforming him back into his 7-year-old self. Because you're not just erasing his memories, you're erasing his experiences and what's made him who he is. That's not a happy ending, that's a curse. And it also means that you're not continuing his arc anymore, you're just erasing him from the show. It's a real cop-out and it's undermining all of his development by bringing him back to a child state, and pointless as well. And then whenever they need to, as a plot device, they're gonna try and like age him up to ask him some questions and then remove him again. I just felt like he was a very big character and it's odd to suddenly just have him disappear like that from the show. So in terms of other characters, this show has a huge problem of bringing in a massive cast and underdeveloping all of them. I don't care if it's a guest character, I don't care if it's an extra, they should have their own backstory and they should be fleshed out too, not just the main characters. Characters like Grumpy and Jiminy Cricket in this show, they're so shockingly underused. Let's start with Ruby. She's always such a slay with her outfits and everything, but I felt like her relationship with Dorothy was really like fake, like generosity towards the LGBTQ community, but not well written, because then Mulan should have got her happy ending relationship and she didn't. And with Granny, again, underdeveloped. What's her backstory? Who is she? I wanted to know more about her. Also, the fact that Ruby's mother was called Anita, which sounds like Anita from 101 Dalmatians. Is there a link there? No. Because then we had Cruella de Vil later, right? So I was waiting for a link. No link. Aurora. She's not my favorite character, but I like that she wasn't a great fighter and she was really unapologetically feminine and sweet. Although she was a bit annoying sometimes. Like when she was introduced, I didn't like her, but she grew on me later. Ariel and Anna were both very sweet characters, but they were way too smiley and chirpy, which made them like kind of cringy and over the top. Other terrible characters are Blue, Leroy / Grumpy, and Rumple's ex-wife. Greg and Tamara were the worst parts of season 3. They're terrible characters. They're meant to like not trust anyone, but yet they're stupid enough to trust the Home Office, even though they don't even know who the Home Office is or who they're reporting to. There's this idea that they're going to expose magic to the real world, and that's their plan, but it actually turns out they're just reporting to Peter Pan, and I was like, oh, well, that's pointless. Now, Greg's motivation, cool. There was this creepy ass subplot in season 2 of Regina becoming obsessed with Greg as a child and wanting to steal him and then killing his dad and dumping his dad's body in the woods. So that was great. Creepy as anything, but great. So he had a reason to hate Regina and hate magic, right? Because it took his father, and Regina like wanted to indoctrinate him into her creepy family or something. But Tamara had no motivation to hate magic. She had no reason to want to expose magic to the world, but she just hated it for no reason. And then they just killed her off. Why? Why? And she was Neal's fiance. Wouldn't it have been better to show her as a character who was shocked and didn't know how to handle the fact that magic was real and deal with it? You know what I mean? Rather than just villainizing her. So when you look at the arcs of the show, they messed up Rumple, they messed up Emma, they at points messed up Hook and Belle, all because they wanted shock value and they wanted to keep renewing the show for more seasons and they didn't know what else to do with them. But you know, despite me being frustrated, the reason I'm frustrated is because this show has so much potential. It's so fabulous, and it really did have so much to offer at the time. And there were a lot of great things about it that really were wonderful. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot out of it, and make sure to stay tuned for the rest of the videos in this series. And you can check out my Patreon for as little as $2 a month if you want to see more videos from me. Thanks so much for watching.